Pigeons 420. Mr. Grow It. From the staff.
Thank you to AC Infinity for sponsoring today's video. Consider checking out the automatic water sprayer. It comes with a rechargeable sprayer with a 2200 milliamp power capacity. Supports up to 3 hours of continuous water diffusing. You can even modify the direction and spread of the spray with just a twist of the nozzle. Head on over to acinfinity.com, use promo code THESTASH15 and save a few dollars off at checkout.
This episode is brought to you by Stash Blend. I've been using Stash Blend for over a year now, and it's awesome. One of the things that I really like is that it saves me money. It's a whole bunch of different inputs in one. So I no longer have to go out there and buy a silica bottle, then a separate seaweed bottle, beneficial bacteria, then a separate one for mycorrhizal fungi. All of that plus more is in this one blend. Go to stashblend.com to learn more about it, and I also have a link down in the YouTube description section below. From the Stash Podcast, my name is Chris. We've got Rob and we've got Pigeons here.
Oh.
And we are in Canada.
We're in Canada. Welcome to the first Canadian
baby.
Episode in the history of From the Stash Podcast.
The first Canadian episode.
Expanding our reach. I can't reach.
And this technically is our house because he said that when he brought us here. He said, "Mi casa, su casa," but in Canadian. He said, "This house, my house is your house."
Eh?
And I said, "He's an E, bud." And I was like, "All right, brother." So we decided to kind of take over Pigeon Studios, the flock. This is the coop.
This is it. This is it.
Yeah.
I got to be honest. I'm flattered to have you guys here.
Dude,
Because
it's a dope setup.
it's not often, thank you. It's not often that I can have folks here that are in the same realm of work that I do and that can appreciate kind of the spaces that I have and the effort and the time and just the capabilities. It just, thank you. Your guys' words have been so kind and so nice, and it just makes it just feel right. It feels right. But yeah, this has just been a space that I've grown into, and it's an absolute pleasure to have you guys grow into it as well.
Well, I feel
Thanks
like
for having
Tom
us.
because this feels like my
Pleasure.
space. But doom. Those are
My
bars.
space.
Those are bars. I just want to put that out there. I started out
I see
hot.
what he did
I did
just
feel like
there.
Tom.
That
Yeah,
was good. That was good.
But man, for one, shout out to the drip. We got the young riff raff out here. I'm just gonna point this out right away as the podcast goes.
Thank you.
I'm wearing the same shoes. Found out the name brand is Fashion.
I'm wearing fashion.
I'm wearing Fashion. So next time people ask me what I'm rocking,
Folks
Fashion.
listening in, Pigeons wearing pink shoes.
These
Got,
are
Rob with the
actually
beige.
bright. These are LeBron pink Crip style shoes.
They were 25% off. So still only 75% above actual value.
That is, it's not a
I couldn't say no.
not a bad deal.
I couldn't say no. It's an incredibly gorgeous summer out here. I'm glad you guys could soak up some of the heat that we have here, because a lot of people attribute the cold weather or Canada to cold weather, and it's been really nice. Yesterday, you guys saw 107, I think it said on the Richter scale.
In freedom units,
In
yeah.
freedom
it
units?
was gross.
Wow.
Yeah. And then today, I think it's somewhere around 90, 95, something like that.
Yeah,
So
we were
it's real nice. Only
surprised,
31,
man. We
30.
got out. Me and Wink got out of our second flight out here into Winnipeg, and I was like, "What the? Where are we in California? What is, dude? It was so hot. Like I'm talking, the heat wave because we came out of the air conditioned flight essentially. Like it was not just air conditioned, but it was conditioned. There was humidity misters in the top. Like
I
it was
saw
a
that.
perfect condition where I was like, this is beautiful. And then we step out and I'm like, what the fuck? Oh, I thought we were going to Canada. And it was just, yeah.
Bro, it's like I compare the humidity out here. If you've ever held onto a sheet, like a bed sheet, and you just like walk into it. That's what I feel like the humidity is. You've probably never done that.
Well, sticky.
I do it
It's
every
definitely
day.
sticky. It's
Every
definitely
day,
sticky.
brother.
You've done that every day. It's one of a kind. It's one of a
Well-
kind. But if it's definitely beautiful. I love it.
Well, I got out here and like, this is the first time allegedly that I didn't bring BYOB, we'll just say. And so I was greeted, luckily, with some chill out OG, which is very tasty.
Yeah.
And then also P went and splurged and went over to one of the local dispos, which we normally, if there's good ones, there's good ones. But to grab some stuff, and unfortunately, it was cardboard.
It was all trash.
The train wreck was okay,
Was it the train wreck?
but it was harsh.
That was the train wreck.
Every other one was just
It bit.
no flavor.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's why
We
a
saved
long
you.
time. What was? Yeah, we did save you. I didn't even want it's scattered around somewhere.
It's
Like we're not
long gone. No one's even going to look for it.
Nobody will. But
No,
that's
the birds.
what kind of brought me thinking back. We had an episode years ago now. One of the first episodes that we had. We were talking about how to grow tastier, and I think that it's one that maybe needs to be brought back up. Obviously, because it seems like there's still an issue going on where a lot of people aren't having tastier bud. And maybe there's just some things that were missed or some things that could be discussed or emphasized more. So I thought maybe today I'd bring you guys out to my studio and discuss. I'm in the throne.
Thanks for having us.
If you're listening and just watching, this is
T with R.
T with R.
Rob's in the king seat
is
there.
such like P or B or like G or all sorts of different things. Even C could run. But R? Hey, R. R.
This is T with Yar.
T with R.
It's the last tea you'll ever have,
Yeah.
brother. Yeah, trying to enhance the taste of your herb
Flavor.
can be and what did I say? Taste? What did I say?
Enhance the taste, but I'm just saying better flavor.
Better flavor.
I was like your ad lib guy.
Oh, I
so
see. Yep.
said,
Yep.
flavor.
Yep. My Keenan Peele.
Keenan
Is that
Peel.
two different guys? Keenan Peele, right?
Yeah, Key
Yes.
and Peel.
Oh, it's Key and
Yeah.
Peele.
Yep.
It's two different.
But I was thinking Keenan is a
What
person.
are we talking about? That's so
I just thought of the one time that Barack Obama did the
Dap handshake.
this correspondence supper, and he had what was his name? It's not Keenan Peele.
Key and Peel.
No, he just had the one guy, the skinny.
Now you're
guy.
asking
skinnier
me
guy.
fucking
Who's
questions.
this?
Now
He
I don't
had
even
Key.
know I'm in Chris's
He had
position.
Key
I don't know what
there,
he's talking about.
and Key would say the things that Barack Obama was thinking. It was hilarious. But anyways, so one of the reasons that I think it's a good point to have a conversation in regards to the better flavor of your herb is because right here, right now, where I'm at, things can be pretty moist, and it can be really kind of tough to like conquer the dry stage and not have something negative happen or get that hay flavor to your herb with either under drying or over drying. It's definitely a difficult thing to speak on, but in my opinion, one of the most important things when it comes to trying to enhance that flavor is kind of like the temperature / environment.
Yeah, growing it especially, but drying it too.
Drying
People
in
don't pay
particular.
attention to
Drying
how
in
important
particular.
temperature. Like they think they'll just I got to deal with what I got to deal with. Like, well, then deal with not as good as smoke. Unfortunately, that's just oftentimes the case. And if you have very low temperatures, oftentimes you're going to have very low humidity. Seemingly just kind of goes hand in hand. So then you're going to potentially run into drying the product too much, and that could be in your grow as well. Terpenes, the volatility, you're going to cook off your terps, and that's not what I don't think anybody really wants to do. And you also have a potential to hinder the growth of the plant itself, and you're not really going to get the most unique characteristics out of it. I think temperature is an important factor, of course.
100%. When I grew Chris's Chill Out OG up here. The smell, which you were so kindly willing to fill me in on, is closer to the Brisker OG.
Very aromatic, though.
Very, very, very flavorful. Like to the nose, like it has some like good funk to it, and I actually attribute the fact that I was able to pull out some really good, tasty terpenes and profiles to it was to the temperature that I had, because not only was the veg temperature generally colder, but right through from flower to the dry stage, colder, and they turned purple. You see that? You've seen that?
Yeah, the good color off of that.
Good
The
color.
breeder saw it. He
Good
saw
color.
it.
He saw it. So I would say if you're gonna try to grow good, tastier product, you certainly want to make sure that you are dialing in your environment, trying to make sure that you don't have things too hot, too cold, too dry, too moist. Now, Chris, you've spoken on, it's a little over my head, but you've spoken on the 60-60 method, trying to get a 60-60
Fahrenheit.
in freedom units. That's correct. And in freedom,
I was recently just told
Moisture.
by somebody how confusing it is for them because they go by Celsius like every other country. And they're like this, and people just say 60-60, and they never really emphasize what they're saying.
right. I'm a Canadian. And
Yeah,
I have a shirt on my merch store that says doesn't grow in Celsius.
it's
So,
scientifically proven.
It's proven. Bruce Bugby. Can you speak on that, Chris? But the 60-60 being what is kind of accepted as the general rule of thumb may have some limits.
Yeah, you're talking about the drying, right? Not actually growing.
I'm sorry, in the drying stage.
Okay.
Yeah, in the drying stage.
And let's start at the end and work back, because then how that temperature and humidity, does it need to change from when you're in flower into drying and curing, or can you run simultaneously? Because I know some people just shut off their light, run their grow, and that's essentially their drying and curing space. So is that is this a rule of thumb that you want to keep it around there, do you think, for drying and curing for 60-60, so 60% humidity, 60 degrees Fahrenheit? Or do you think that this is just somewhat hearsay? And I know you've
Start
had
with the
people on
money
your show.
info first.
Money info.
Well, there's
Dollars.
a study that is out there by the CRC, and Dr. Allison Justice, shout out to her, I had her on the podcast, and she talked about this, which is the 60-60 study that they had traditional 60-60 method versus Canatrol, their recommended methods, which was 68 degrees Fahrenheit at a 54 dew point, which equates to about a 60 to 61, I believe, % humidity. So it's a higher temp is what they were drying at. And they saw, I believe it was a 14% increase in the retention of terpenes. So through the drying process. So kind of flip-flop from what we're used to of reducing the temperature during drying will maintain that potency, right? This is showing, it's 68% and it's maintaining it. Has to really do with like the swing in the environment. I think it's the traditional 60-60 method when you're doing it in a grow tent, for example, and you've got the fans going and you've got exhaust. Some people have exhaust. Everybody's setup could be a little bit different, right? But traditionally in a grow room or a bathroom or an open room, some people have humidifiers going, some people have dehumidifiers going, heater, air conditioner. So that it goes up and down quite a bit right now. Some people swear that, oh, my drying conditions are stable, just as stable as the Canatrol. It's like, okay, it's kind of subjective in that avenue, but what the studies were saying, trying to back things up, the studies were saying that the higher temperature, the 68 degrees Fahrenheit, actually retained more than the 60-60 traditional method. Now it's a Canatrol versus the grow tent style, I believe, is what or maybe they were in a room. Not too sure of the details on that one. But yeah, I thought that portion was interesting when it comes to the potency relating to the dry.
I'm not going to argue with someone who thinks...
Oh, I ain't.
No.
Well, hold on. Here, one last thing. Here's the controversy
please.
behind it is that the CRC is sponsored by Canatrol, right? Like it's funded by Canatrol.
Sounds like the autoflower
for them to
cup.
do that study. And so like...
No offense.
This is kind of a deeper subject. I was like, where does funding come from for the scientists, right? We don't really get that government-backed stuff to come in
It goes from private
or our
companies,
industry,
yeah.
right? So private company is the one funding these studies. Obviously, a private company is going to fund a study that potentially makes, helps improve their product sales, right? Whether or not it's rigged, the studies are rigged or not,
Like the
that's where you got to
growers
look
call it.
at Dr. Allison Justice and the people who did that study. You gotta understand, like, are they ethical about it or not, right? And some people, oh no, they're not ethical because they didn't pay by Canatrol. Other people like, yeah, we're gonna give them the benefit of the doubt. They're scientists. They do
wanna
this.
Have good results. They're gonna show good results. They're not gonna lie. You buy their product. They give that exact, ratio, and it sucks. You know what I'm saying? Like that's one thing I've learned in this space is people are too conspiracy minded. There's no reason a brand is going to spend all that money on white papers or on just a study in general and put out false information and then sell a product that uses that false information and then have the results not be there. Like,
Yeah, so it's a kind of split in regards to that particular study. But yeah, that study potentially shows that it is retaining that potency. It is retaining that flavor, right? The smell, the aromas that come from it. It's retaining all that. And a Canatrol at 68 degrees Fahrenheit versus your traditional 60-60. So yeah, that's one thing in regards to the growing better tasting.
So I think that
my question to you, Rob, have you ever heard of Boeing?
what? Oh yeah,
Have you ever
Boeing
heard
Jet
of-
Boys.
or
Yeah,
the
shout
Ford-
out, shout
the
out
Ford-
420 thing.
The Ford Pinto?
Well, I think that's the thing is like
These are to be devil's avocado. These are companies that willfully knew that there was issues with their product, but sold it anyways I don't want to say that. Boeing allegedly, but then hid that information and sold their product anyways. But this isn't the point of the conversation. I understand. I had to say it because there's going to be people in the chat who are like, "Come on, you can't." Because yeah, there is a lot of conspiratorial minds. But this is the problem is is that I bet you, now I don't know, but I bet you, just using the same kind of analogy, that when let's say the Model T, let's say when cars were first around and invented, who do you think was the company that was doing the most tests on cars? Ford. And so when things came out that were good about their vehicle, they would share that information. If there was information that didn't come out that was favorable about that information, they didn't share it. So I would be willing to believe that actually the study's probably accurate because it backs up what CANatrol is trying to do. If that's it, and I have to say that loosely because they only funded a study. Someone's got to fund that, and why wouldn't the company who has the most interest put a penny in?
And if
Why
anything,
not?
let's say that maybe it's not exactly 14%. Maybe it still retains, it's still better. If it's better, if it's advantageous, then it's advantageous. And honestly, that goes back to in growing, in the flowering side. That's a temperature range, that's a VPD range, Dr. VPD, that could be doable for that point of flower. So you actually could just shut off your lights and maintain that same temperature and humidity in your tent, ballpark, and do well. Some people will drop the humidity lower. That's oftentimes something people will say is more advantageous again as well. But when you're in the summer, oftentimes we're in warmer temperature, you're in an indoor grow, it's a little harder to lower your temperature without having humidity situations there too. So you'll oftentimes increase your humidity. And that's where, unless you're constantly maintaining the reservoir, you may have times where it goes out. And that's that fluctuation where I think is a big issue. And that's one key point, if you're writing down notes and listening, is to make sure that you don't have a major fluctuation. Like you were saying, more than anything is a consistent, stable range. If you're 60-60 or if you're 68-54 or 68-60, make sure that it's stable and steady. I think some people will have the dips and they don't realize it because it's nighttime and the house is colder, or it's, outside it rained that day. That's what I deal with every time I harvest for decades now. Is it rains dramatically the day that I harvest. So I'm like, great, humidity just shot the hell up after it was so dry for weeks and weeks and weeks. I think the factor that people will oftentimes not think about is it's the same with the fluctuations is the same in your flowering time. You don't want to have it in flowering, nor do you want to have it in harvesting. So maintaining that oftentimes would be, again, shout out AC Infinity, discount code THE-15. A controlled environment. Grow tents are very good for drying and very good for growing. And if you don't have a room that's sealed and tight and right to make sure it's a controlled environment, it's not going to help as well. But with controlled stress is a thing I feel is a conversation as well. Not having the stress where you're having foxtailing and heat issues and your plants being overwhelmed there and you're having trichome production maybe that looks gnarly and cool, but your terpenes now are suffering. Have you guys ever dealt with a situation where you utilized a controlled stress technique to be able to help increase your terpene production potentially?
Of course. Yeah. Really quick before we touch on that though, since you mentioned the AC Infinity, the last part of this episode that we did was done 2.5 years ago.
Yep, part one, huh?
That was over 30 months ago. You know how many products ACI has dropped to help hone in the environment on your community?
Dude.
Or on your community. On your
community.
Your
whole
hone in your
community's
community.
environment.
You can hone in your community. Fix your marriage with a good clip-on
Dude.
fan.
You could get to work even if you use it Terraform.
Terraform. You'll get to work. Go car. I just think of the things that you've been able to control over the last. So wow, how things have changed. Just about every single thing has control now in your garden. Do I think that you can use stress to 100%? I loosely, I'll only touch on it again so that Christopher can talk. Hashtag let Chris speak. Is temperature is a kind of a controlled thing. Whereas like, it's cold here, man. I'm going to grow in the fall. It's going to be closer to wintertime. I know that that's going to express things that isn't necessarily going to be expressed when things are warm or stressed under heat. So yeah, using a colder environment to kind of hone in on some of those terpenes that might be volatile or say prone to dissipation or deterioration because of the extreme heat. You know, we often blast so much light down onto our plants, and it's like, how many terpenes do you think are lost because it's so intense at the top of those lights or in those canopies with those lights that it's like maybe the heat, the stress of the heat, the light has something to do with it. Can you control that with temperature? I believe so.
A lot of people think you could add CO2 and still maintain, and they realize your plant can maintain, the plant material can maintain. But the
But what about those
cannabinoids-
those terpene
cannabinoids
profiles?
yeah, the
Yeah.
terpenes may still
Yeah.
not. And that's something commercial grows often forget about. And I think that's the big issue there when a commercial grow setting is they pump them full of CO2 so they can push that heat because it costs a lot to cool these grows, man. It's insane. You see, it's a commercial grow when you got like 50 big AC units outside next to each other. Like, oh yeah, they're growing weed. Like, you just know. But it's oftentimes they're wanting to push that plant to get more yield. And then by doing that, they're actually, their precision stress technique of crop steering, we'll say, is actually increasing the yield, but it's degrading the terpenes. It just is naturally happening. And that's before it even gets into the drying and harvesting period. So while the plant's growing, you're getting maybe more trichome production even because they'll use some UV lighting in there. But at the same time, now you're sacrificing terpenes. So I think that's where the precision stress techniques of even crop steering have to be very dialed in and oftentimes aren't going to be advantageous to those who are trying to grow more plant material is really what most people are aiming for. More pounds per light. They're not talking pounds of terpenes or pounds of trichomes,
Yeah, 100%. I mean, what was I going to say? Gee, I was losing my train
Well,
of
that's
thought
good.
already.
I was gonna let
No.
you speak. No, sorry. Did you get it? Did you get
See
it?
what it was?
Hashtag let Chris speak. Well, he
Yeah.
always forgets his thoughts.
Yeah.
That's why he's not speaking.
Well, since you didn't speak, here I go.
What had happened was
No.
the second he got in the vehicle, I had a blunt ready.
Yeah, as soon as he-
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
3 bones deep already for the day.
Immediately. And then I'm just
Four
over here
right
taking,
now.
it's a cigar. I have to the head, YouTube. But yeah.
Well, we know generally speaking that the higher the temperature, the more terpenes volatilize, right? So that terpene loss is happening. So yeah, you're absolutely right. You might be getting more biomass in those higher temps, but you're potentially losing that potency as well. And that's one thing I had Shane from My Grow. Big shout out to him. I had him on my podcast for a second time, Garden Talk podcast, pretty recently. And one thing he had mentioned that he learned from Dr. Bruce Bugby. We're getting credit here, the line
Dr.
of credit.
Bruce
I heard from
is-
Shane. Shane
he's
heard
our
from Dr. Bruce
Moses.
Bugby. But
Well, I'm
anyway,
gonna say
from the
something
plants.
by the dog.
Bugby just was like, hey guys. And they taught him everything.
the famous Dr. Bugby, but they did a study where basically they ran a lower temp in flowering, and we're talking mid-flowering, right? So they had their temperatures were pretty ramped up, beginning of flowering. Mid-flowering, they knock back that degrees. Don't quote me on it. I want to say it's about 75 degrees Fahrenheit, and they just ran that for the rest of the grow. And LED, I believe, my understanding, and they found an increased potency versus running the higher temps. So that's kind of the, well, I'm going to say new thing, but you're going to hear a lot more people talking about reducing those temps in mid-flowering, keeping at those in order to grow higher potency,
I'd say
increase the
that's
potency of the
science
plants.
meeting bro science. Because a lot of us have said lower the temperatures for more trichome production and things like that.
And there weren't really studies out, and now we've got
That's why
scientists
Bruce
that are
Bugby-
coming out and saying it because they
There's
have
people-
studies on it.
Well, there's people get mad when we say, quoting Dr. Bruce Bugby, well, go to school, okay? Get your botany
Get a
degree.
degree. Become a doc.
Get some credibility because people don't care what horticulturists have to say. They'll try and apply and it'll work, but the credibility comes from a scholar and a gentleman. And I think in this case, precision stress techniques in temperature are so crazy massive, man. People don't even realize because, you can increase your biomass if that is your goal because a lot of people are looking for more yield. But you can increase your trichome production and terpenes by focusing, and that's what you're smoking for, really. The people who are extracting the plants know this now. But that's what you can do by dialing in that temperature and humidity at these certain points. And I feel vegging isn't going to be as big of a thing. A lot of people will think with the stress techniques, they're going to be low stress training or super cropping, things like that. And I have seen plants still sometimes, like the combative component would be more trichome production even. But I've never noticed increased terpenes from anything like that. And that's just my, pro science take of it. But when it comes to something in terms of like your humidity, people will also sometimes drop that humidity later in flower. So I've in the past done 30-40% because I'm in winter and I'm like, this is good, this will work. And I've noticed that my plants are more frosty, more funky, more dank, but my temperature is lower too. So it's almost like I'm just changing on the VPD chart. It's not like I'm having this massive swing that's taking it from high to low. I don't think that there's a lot of guarantees with every cultivar to say that you do this and it's going to be better. Because you look at Chill Out OG, I ran that at high temperatures and mine was it was so much like peas. It was crazy when I had it. Because I was like, this is fire right here. And then I'm really checking it out. I was like, oh, it's Chill Out OG. I was like, but it looks not like the purple in this blows my mind. But that's where those temperatures came in. So it's even better than what it is. But I grow Headbanger in the summertime and it's not as terpy. It's not as flavorful. I grow a sherbet cream pie even, not as terpy, not as flavorful. It seems like the lineage of some of these cultivars will express cannabinoids more by doing some of these techniques. Have you noticed that?
100%. Yeah. And now's a good time to touch upon genetics. You want to grow tastier? Look at the genetics, right?
Yeah,
It starts with the
get some
genetics.
premium
We
genetics.
probably should have started with genetics, but we talk about genetics
Starts with
a
swank.
lot. If I'm looking to grow something tasty and I'm browsing for genetics, I look at the listing, product listing, and see what they have for a description there, right? See if there's anything that's going to appeal to me, the flavor that I'm looking for, right? Does it even list flavor? Some, cultivar, some strains are going to focus more on the effects. They're really going to be effect focused versus some people are going to advertise flavor over it, smell, all that stuff. But a lot of these good listings, like there are several banks out there that have listings and they have that explanation in detail. So you want to grow something tasty? What does the listing description say? Just start with that. And sure, it could be inaccurate, right? But that's what we've got to go off of. So maybe start there and genetics.
I know that, I know that Rob likes the sweet candy,
Of course,
fruity stuff.
grape.
So when he's looking for something, that's what he wants to look for.
Yeah.
The gas, that
Of course,
nasty,
it's all I
funky
like.
stunk. He's going to avoid that.
Pigeons is sarcastic now for the audio folks that can't see what we're doing.
Can't see him cringing over here. I
hates it.
do think genetics is very important. Shout out to Swank. That's our
the
guy.
best start.
That's when that man pulled me out of GMO. I just have to get personal with this one.
Oh my god!
Swank gave me some of the best. Well, a Swank
the ice cream
along
cake.
with it was Eric Nugshots.
I think that might have been Atlas seed code that he got. That GMO was from the Eric had.
Who? That Eric
I
did?
think it was Atlas
Atlas.
because I remember asking him that, and now I recently saw Atlas. I'm like, oh,
Okay.
Put it together.
I'm telling
I
you
think. Don't quote me.
that and Swank in particular, I know because he involves it a lot with his.
Swank's
his,
got the cut, bro.
concentrates, and man, that flavor, that smell, just that nasty, funky, garlicky, oniony smell that you really take in from that genetic. Get it from the source, man. Get it from the source because that's going to get you exactly what you're looking for. If I'm looking for a chill out OG that's got a little more of that brisker OG,
I'm gonna go
MrGrowth.com.
MrGrowth.com/drop.
I'm going to go to MrGrowth.com/drop.
That's number one rule.
Number
from
one.
the last video to this video. If you don't start with terpy genetics, you're going to be growing. I did this for
Cardboard.
3 years in a row. I grew all these different genetics. I went through 100 cultivars. Me and Trey did between the two of us. Not one did we find from that mix that was tasty.
Wow.
A lot of unique ones, good growers, but nothing was tasty. But we also were ignorant to pheno hunting, and we were doing pick and mix and 1 and 2 seeds at a time, feminized genetics, and it wasn't that great. And I was like, what are we doing wrong, dude? Like, I used to always grow nothing but tasty. And I come to realize, I'm like, oh, well, I need to hunt more of these. And I ended up finding more that had the flavor that popped. I had some that were, kind of tasty. My best growing chill out OG, my biggest, fattest cola was the most bland of them all. And my popcorny kind of one was just fire, like super dank, but it wasn't the one to show. You know what I'm saying? Like the one I did in my video wasn't the tastiest one, but the kind of runty one was so fire. But you got to hunt for that. You can't just expect to get that because it's the name of the genetic. And then having the basic recipe of growing, a flower, that should be able to get you to the point to get at least enough expressions to be like, oh, that's a lot of potential. Not just like nothing, bland, nah. Like the stuff that, dude, literally, I sat there, the GMO cookies that you got from the dispo, I sat there for like a couple minutes, like, he's like, if you have to work that hard on it, it's not it. And I was like, yeah, you're right, you're right.
You should know the moment you peel that.
I sat there just trying to give the benefit of the doubt. I'm like,
It's there. He's like, it's got to be there.
like, come on.
It's got to be there.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
just, if it's not there, it's not there. And that's a big thing, is you can take all these techniques and all these different tips and everything, but if the genetic doesn't have those expressions, you get the wrong pheno, just start from scratch. Move on to the next thing. You don't think you're going to find it after you get this next, you go get Stash Blend, which is great. Awesome. You got it. That's not the secret recipe to get you flavor. If you haven't had flavor at all from this genetic, it'll grow better. Might get you a little bit more terp, maybe, but it ain't going to make it gas all of a sudden. It doesn't work that way.
No.
Well, it does relate to nutrition, which definitely relates to growing tasty.
Honest.
Okay, I guess
know
I'm
what I
wrong.
mean? So,
Stash
like,
Blend will
that-
give you tasty flour.
That comes into that conversation. Let's transition to the I don't say growing medium, but nutrition as well. I mean,
living soil, right? Living soil gives you better terps. That's what a lot of people claim, right? I don't think there are any studies to back that up as of right now, but people swear by it.
Bruce says no.
But Bruce, yeah, everyone, yeah.
Dr. Bruce says no.
Those elements break down to the exact same elements as your synthetic bottled nutrients, and that's what the plant's uptaking. And so there's no difference in flavor. But yeah, again, that's lots of theories. There's other things that kind of relate within the living soil, how the microbes are working down there, so on and so forth. I don't know the exact, I can't get into the explanation on why people are claiming that living soil gives the better flavor. You can?
I get it. I know why.
There we go.
Because it's a complete nutrition formula. And the bottles, a lot of us see 8 friggin' bottles and we get 4. Because a lot of people are like, you don't need all that. You don't need everything. And it's like, dude, these companies made a key and a formula. And if you don't use all of it, it's not going to be good. Nobody who makes organic soil decides to skimp out on key elements of their micro or macronutrients. They get every single little bit and piece. And the ones who don't say that organic growing isn't, they don't care. But I feel like organic plants give you everything you need. You have the full battery for food, as where synthetic, if you don't follow the recipe to the T, a prime example is Athena. Like when at Franklin Fields, they got the Athena nutrients, ran it. We're like, everybody was like, the old nutrients were better. Success was way better.
Wow.
Then Athena came in, gave them the program, broke it down to the T of EC at this point, drybacks at this point, and man, literally night and day in the quality. It was like, dude, okay, there's something to the science. It's not just the bottles. It's how you use the bottles. It's when you use the bottles and how the proper formula is. As we're in organic soil, you're feeding your soil. Your soil's properly fed. It's going to feed that plant properly. It's mother bird to the baby bird. As where you got to be mother bird now. I think, and that's not just guaranteed why I'm being a dumbass, but I think that's honestly why. And I've seen it myself because I was like, dude, the headbanger is no different in organic than it was in synthetic. And you got to take a couple dabs, since I've said it twice in this episode. But there was no difference, but it's because they were complete formulas.
If I may, I remember I spoke with an individual who's doing an LOS grow just out inside Winnipeg. I went and visited his operation. This was he didn't like the term, but he's the master grower of this operation.
Massive grower.
And he was explaining to me that they have a genetic that they've been growing forever. They've already put it on the shelves. It's been in circulation. It's something that they're very familiar with. And they had converted, this was pre just a couple years ago or a year ago. Then they converted their entire operation to LOS. The entire operation from living organic soil. And they found that in this particular genetic, they were finding a brand new terpene that they had never seen grow in this genetic before.
There's something to it.
It had never been there before. It was very unique, and it was only happening because they were growing in LOS. So, and I got no reason to not believe them. I believe people who have been doing this craft for a very long time can determine the slight change in their product. And that made me think that, no, maybe it doesn't bring out like more expressive terpenes.
Or a higher terpene percentage. But more expressive terpenes.
Well, okay, maybe I don't know how to say this properly, but it's like, if it's bringing out a terpene that's just not regularly present in this genetic, well, it's bringing out
more terps.
Now, is it better than another way to grow? Well, maybe in the other way to grow, the other terps are a little bit higher, but those terps were expended to grow this terp. I have no idea. This is far outside my wheelhouse. This is the shit I call up Mr. Grow for. So it's like, this
would be a good question for.
I do know that different mediums are going to have an impact. So I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, and you got to look at it too. You got people who are comparing to someone growing with cocoa, with general hydroponic, or with Fox Farm. So it's not a full, like it's a complete line, but it's not like all your micro and macronutrients. As where most living organic soil is going to be chock full of everything you need. I think that's the big difference. Is like, if you follow everything, yes, you can grow. Like people were like, "Oh, you don't need all that to grow a plant." It's like, yeah, I know, but you're growing biomass. That's what you're growing now. You're growing more biomass. Yeah, you got big fat colas, but the terps are and the flavonoids are not there. I think that's the argument with organic soil, that you get that naturally. You get that right away because your soil is going to be enriched with nutrients that are going to give it to the plant, and it's going to take it up how it wants to properly instead of being force fed how you're doing it. As where if you go get a program or a recipe, you can really dial it in and kill it. I've seen it even with advanced nutrients. As much as I don't love the million bottles, I've seen some fire. I mean, smoke some really good stuff. And I'm like, this was advanced? Or House and Garden, Kronk Nutrients, so many different lines. Vitana Plant Science. I mean, so many different nutrient lines. It's crazy. But the people had a routine and regimen. It wasn't just a name brand of what they had, Organic soil is organic soil for the most part. But you need to make sure you have all of your micro and macronutrients. Otherwise, the argument isn't valid,
Do you think the time... Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I just think I can't wait till there's more studies that come out about this. And I'm a little bit surprised that there isn't already these studies out there. It's just, it goes to show how slow our industry kind of is on the cultivation side of things and studying this plant. And I would do the testing myself if I had access to testing. I don't have access to terpene testing at my in my state, unfortunately. I wish as a medical patient I was able to have access to terpene testing, but I simply don't. Now, larger commercial facilities would be great if they were putting out studies and stuff. You know what I mean? People have their own R&D. Every cultivation facility is kind of different. Some do R&D, though, right? And they are doing studies and stuff. Hope to see some stuff in the future where it kind of compares living soil versus the synthetic nutrients, different lineups and stuff like that. We're just missing that now. And that's, some people might be listening in on this and be like, these guys don't really seem like they know the whole picture here. And I don't think anybody knows the whole picture here because the studies aren't available as of right now. So looking forward to the future to kind of get some data unveiled,
Well, it's like circling back to the original mention about the potential bullshit study that was put out. I think that's the argument we have right now, is the people doing it in private sectors. And that's the argument for full legalization, is we can have people being funded properly by the government, which, trust so much, but to be able to give us that data to be able to support some of the theories. Right now, a lot of it's just theories, and it's some of it's subjective also, because the variables that we have of the environmental impact, the genetics they're using, the nutrient regimen, what kind of process they have, the media, when they're harvesting, how they're drying and curing, so many variables. Until we have a big study that shows these side-by-side controlled experiments, it's going to be preference at the end of the day. But if you can't argue if it's tasty or terpy or not. And I think that any kind of way that you grow, you can unlock it. But the biggest thing is knowing some key portions and being very rigid and kind of anal on some of these things too. Again, the fluctuations is a big thing for me. You don't want to let this happen to your garden at any point, but you'll understand why if there's variables when you're like, why does my bud smell like hay? Well, think about last month. Remember when the power went out? You had 2 weeks. There's issue. These are these little things that actually could be a big factor in the plant world.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I wanted to mention, I don't think we talked about in the last episode in regards to the timing of your harvest. In which point should you actually harvest your product? I find, depending on what you're cultivating, if it is a GMO, you could be waiting 13 weeks to get that prime GMO. And I know I spent the first couple years of my harvest or my gardening career harvesting things way too early. So I want people to consider that. We started with the good meaty information right off the bat in regards to harvesting. And then, kind of working our ways into temperature and training.
Yeah, this isn't a how-to episode. We have that on Mr. Grow It.
No,
on Pigeons
there's tons of
CLtv,
how-tos. But one thing
we should end on is timing.
Is timing. Actually, believe it or not, I actually think it is a good thing to believe on. But if you've spent the weeks and the months to put in your grow, and you want to make sure that you did grow the terpiest, nastiest stuff you've ever grown, the process in which you smoke it might actually have a huge impact on how much terpenes you're really taking in.
Great point.
We spoke with Troy in another episode. I wish I could pull up that number for you, but if you check it out, we spoke with Troy from 420 Zone, and he was explaining to us that through his through the Vana, you can really get those expressive terpenes or get the terpene expression because you're not burning away all of those terpenes. And you're not burning away all those cannabinoids. You're actually taking them in at a temperature that maintains the most value.
Dude, I
And
got a
that
buddy
is
who
so
smokes
important.
mids, but thinks it's fire because all he does is smoke out of his volcano.
And if you're torching it away with
But it's
butane,
mids.
you know you know how long it took me to realize that herb doesn't taste like herb; it tastes like butane. That was a big thing for me, as I always
In a
thought
bowl, man,
had the same
heavily.
taste.
That's what I always argue when I
It was
say I like
always the
smoking
same
a blunt.
taste.
And he told me that I'm pretty much the best of us because, well, me and you, the mid boys,
Mid voice,
because we like blunts. Because like a joint or a blunt,
it's
will
natural,
that and it'll burn the flower behind it. It'll vaporize it potentially quicker,
right?
and you'll be getting terpenes
remember that.
expressed through there.
I remember him saying
it
that.
could be bro science, but I love it, and I'm
Hell of
lean
a
on it.
conversation,
But
gentlemen.
that's a great one, man.
Hell
Yeah.
of a conversation.
If there's
How-
anything that we may have missed, and I'm sure there is, and
We
I'm
always
going to
do.
look at you right there, main camera, let us know. I think that's, and actually I'm going to come look at you now. I'm going to switch it up, Jesse. If you see that. I think that honestly, there's more opportunity to find things that people have done themselves because we don't have science to back some of this stuff. We just have experiments and we have testing. Let us know if there's some things that you've done that we've missed, you know?
Yes.
There's some good points maybe we forgot about and we're just overlooking.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And big shout out to the Patreons. So folks that we're scrolling on the screen right now. And
Much love to you guys. You guys really help this show. You guys are our main sponsor, and we hope to one day primarily have you as our sponsor. We're going to be doing a lot more cool stuff for that.
/from the stash. Go and
That
check
kind
it
of
out.
rhymes too. Patreon.com/from the stash.
Yeah, you guys say the right rhymes, guys. The wicked episode, boys.
My God.
Until Brofecta.
Big
We'll see
shout
you
out to
guys.
Wink on the ones and twos.
Thank you, Wink.
Much love to you guys. We'll see you next time.
Peace.
Stay lifted.
Peace.